Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Got Game, where we play test board and card games and let you guys decide whether or not they're interesting enough to get published. Today's game is a game called Hydras. It's a game by Kirsten Hale from a company called Wizard Beard Games. It's a card game where you chop off everyone's Hydra head so that way you can grow some more or try to keep them from growing more than you. Who's going to have the biggest Hydra? We'll find out. In the game Hydra, every player is going to take one of these Hydra bodies that have two necks sticking out, and they're going to randomize them, and then one player is going to pick a card each. The player with the star card is the one that's going to go first. In this game, the objective is to have the most Hydra heads. Now, if you connect the Hydra heads to your body, that's considered some points. In this case, this would have 1, 2, 3 Hydra heads, therefore 3 points at the end of the game. But you don't want to play cards like that too soon, because then you would stop off your progression. For example, this card gives you multiple avenues to continuously play more Hydra cards, and so on. If you, on the Hydra cards themselves, you can notice that there are some Roman numerals, just in case you can't seem to tell. For example, on this card, you're not really sure if that's a Hydra head or not. You can just look at the Roman numeral and see how many heads there are in that Hydra. This one's also a kind of a difficult one to see because he's basically eating another Hydra head. In this game, you'll notice also that some of these Hydra cards have these little sword symbols. Now, whenever you connect a Hydra head, it is bound to be cut off. The only way you can save yourself from your head being cut off is as at least 3 cards are touching the card in the middle, and that way that one's technically protected. Unfortunately, this card in this situation is not protected, so another player, or yourself if you so choose, can play a sword card on any part of the Hydra, simply not the body. If you do so, then you can, if someone else plays a sword on you, then you can play a shield card in defense. You notice the little shield symbol in the corner. Now, this can go on for a while, because if someone else plays a sword and you play the shield, that player can continue to play swords while you continue to play more shield symbols until someone finally comes to a halt. In this case, if he was the last one to go, then he would win the battle. All of these cards would be discarded, as well as the card that was attacked, and they would be removed and put into the discard. Excuse me. Also, if you know, there are some neck pieces that really don't do a whole lot for the game. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And if you happen to finish off your Hydra head and completely seal off all ends of your Hydra by the end of the game, then you get an additional bonus 3 points. Now, the last card to explain here is these torch cards. Torch cards don't attack and remove other Hydra heads like the sword symbols do, but the torch cards can be played and basically burn off that part of the neck and kind of make it a nub, so no further heads can be built until that player plays a sword symbol on the torch itself, thus removing the curse, and you can continue building your Hydra. The player, again with the most Hydras at the end of the game, wins. If you cannot build a Hydra in succession in terms of being able to have more connections, then you might have to end up chopping off your own heads. Now, again, like this piece, for example, you couldn't play a dead end card here because this neck has nowhere to go, and that's technically an illegal move. That's basically the game Hydra. Okay, so Mike, what was your initial reaction to the game?
Okay, so when we first played it through, I thought the game was age-oriented. It was definitely directed for a specific group. I felt that was more of a maybe 4 through 9 type group with the cartoony feel, with the simple counting. I saw it more as like this would be in a teacher's classroom to teach the kids how to count. In that case, I think it'd be fun, and if I had kids that age, I would go with it.
Yeah. I can totally see that. It's definitely family friendly. If you're trying to look for something super light, I mean as light as it comes, within 5-10 minutes tops, you know, we're talking like sometimes even lighter than Uno because it goes pretty quick if you can get them going down. Then this is definitely the game you're looking for. Okay. My initial reaction to it was it's a nice theme. Reminded me of like the Disney movie Hercules, and it reminded me of like how you could just chop off as many heads as you wanted, and like only to grow even more heads. So it attracted me enough to put it on the show. But what were some of the things that you actually did like about the game?
Again, I liked the aesthetics. I liked the cartoony feel. It was fun. I like the fact that this is a very simple, short game in the sense that I can play it real quick with somebody or with a group of people between actually having to do things while we're waiting for the pizza to bake or whatever. We can play this quick game before the movies. We can play a quick game. So that's kind of nice. There's not very many games that are targeted at short segments of time, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, as the filler games go, like, this is not going to fill up the time unless several games in. If you want to make it tournament style, I don't know, have several rounds where you add up all the points and things like that. I mean, like a game like Slide 5, for example, where you play over several rounds trying to collect point or not collect points in that game. But the theme is there. I really enjoyed the lightness of it, the fact that of the cartoon, like he was mentioning earlier, the fact that I didn't feel like I was really battling and cutting off Hydra heads. It was more like, oh, take a head off here, take a head off there, add up 3 more here. It was like, it was more fun than serious. And I'm glad they didn't take themselves too seriously in the game. And that was pretty much like the main thing that I liked about it. Not only that, but the rules were super easy to follow. Thank you so much, especially in a playtesting phase. Rules are so important because there are lots of times where we'll just have gaps in the middle of it and you have no idea how this is going to turn out. So, or how you're supposed to play out certain hands and things like that. Anyway, so, okay, let's talk about things we didn't like.
Dislikes, I would have to go with actually the very same thing that I did like about it, meaning the fact that it is such a simple game. For me, I've mentioned before, I like games that are a bit more in-depth and involved. So this isn't a game that I would really go out of my way to play.
Good point. Definitely not something I would bring to the table. Definitely not something I would buy at this particular point, but only because it is too simple. Now, if that's their market, they are dead on. If they are looking for the younger generations or the family-friendly oriented, it is smack on. It is ready to be published. I mean, give it some color and give some color to the rules, make a cute little box or tin, and you're ready to go. However, for people like ourselves, it's definitely not towards that market. But when we started to say, like, when we added in more ways to give points, the points itself was what changed everything. When I said, okay, now I have options. It's not just a matter of, okay, I just drew the cards that have 3 heads on it, and that's how I'm going to win, is just putting down these 3 head cards. It gave me a chance to say, okay, I may only have a bunch of necks, but if I use them properly, I could loop around my entire body and give myself, 8 to 10 points or something like that. Or if they were of specific colors and I play them in specific order, then I can give myself points that way. It took a lot of the dead end cards and said, you know what, this dead end card, just because of its color, might actually add in 1 more point for me. And so it's now worth it. Instead of saying, oh, it's just a 1-pointed head, it might actually give me another 2 or 3 points.
Yes.
So anyway, anything that you would like to see changed about the game?
Yeah, actually that exact same thing. Putting in the puzzle aspect of it, trying to make loops around the body, around just individual pieces, doing the color coding aspect, I felt like brought the game a lot more life. It made it to where it is something at that point that I would bring to the table with my friends. Again, it's still a short game. It's still a quick one, and it's still nothing super deep. Like, you don't have to, let me explain the rules to you for 5 minutes. It's a very simple game, and I liked that as far as a party game. It really came to life when we changed those little things.
That's true. In a 3 to 4 player game, there's a lot more backstabbing, especially when you're like, oh, I'm almost going to make this loop. You know what? Torched it. Sorry, you got to wait another turn at least, and then meanwhile another guy's like, oh no, you're winning, we'll cut off your head too. And then it's kind of like an attack the leader game at some points, especially if you're paying really close attention. Yeah, like I could really see this game getting a lot of hype and a lot of fun factor out of it, simply just because the foundation is solid. And they can simply add on. We were thinking even like maybe an expansion they throw in like Hercules cards all of a sudden, or some sort of hero that comes in and slashes up all the extra heads. Something of that nature, or like protecting your peasants. I think we talked about that once too. Is protecting peasants. Definitely great options for expansions. But before they get to the expansions, they need to start adding a higher point count of some sort that we were mentioning before, some other way to make it a bit more strategic. If that's the market they're going for, is like ourselves.
And see, I think that they could keep both those markets in the sense that it's a 2-in-1 game. For kids who don't really know how to make the loops or don't grasp strategy that well, it can just be a simple put down the heads and count. And then for adults that want more depth, they can actually play around and do more things. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Here's the big question. Our grammatically questionable question. Does this got game?
As it stands right now, yeah, if it's aimed at the right market, it's got game. With the additional rules, with a bit of tweaking, it definitely has got game.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it really has, as it stands, it's got game. Okay, it's solid. The rules are great. All of the mechanics work just nicely. The theme is spot on for the mechanics. It's definitely got game, just not game enough for us to buy it in the stage that it's at. But definitely, if it were to add a bit more flavor, so maybe extra cards, definitely if they can get twice as many cards, it would definitely got more game. Okay, I know this is starting to sound really grammatically inferior, but that's the point. It's got a lot of game potential. How's that? Anyway, so that's what we think. Great. All right, folks, let's recap. The pros are that this game is super light, super fun, super easy to follow, and definitely has a great theme according to its mechanics. I personally enjoy it. The cons, however, not enough cards. Definitely needs probably about twice as many cards that it has. That'll be super easy to fix, I believe. Also, the fact that not a lot of depth. There's just not enough ways to get points. Just counting up the heads is nice and all. Bonus 3 points if you finish off your Hydra by the end, but definitely needs a lot more strategy involved. I'm sure, though, by the time that their Kickstarter goes up, that they'll have changed a lot of those options, and it'll be a bit more heavy game, which is definitely something that we'll need. The Kickstarter goes up sometime in the beginning of next year. We'll give you a recap later on in a further episode, and so stay tuned, guys. Hope you enjoyed the show. That was Hydras.